Welcome back to Daily Flash. I'm Andrea Jackson. Parents with teenagers, have you discussed the importance of mental health with your kids? If you are struggling with the topic, we are here to help. Joining us to talk about sparking the parent-child conversation is the author of Uplift Teens Today, Coping Strategies for Mental Health, Taanvi Arekspudi. Taanvi, welcome back to Daily Flash.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here today.
When is the right time for parents, in your opinion, to start talking about mental health with their teens?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like anytime before a crisis, obviously, when there's a mental health crisis going on, it's not the best time to talk to your child or to your child about mental health or your teenager about mental health. Starting beforehand, the preventative approach rather than the proactive approach or the reactive approach is so much better. So anytime, just check in with them before a crisis so you build that relationship and can help prevent a crisis.
I think it's a struggle for most parents trying to connect with their kids, especially as they're going through the teen phase. They struggle with starting these kinds of conversations because of a generation gap, right? How do these differences affect communication about the topic?
Yeah, there is a huge generation gap, and that's like when the current parents were growing up, they didn't talk about mental health. They had so much stigma about it, and they needed the support but couldn't get it. And now the teenagers, we have a bit more openness about mental health, a bit less stigma. And so both of these kind of views where we're all learning together how to get support and how to give support. So it's so important to remember that we're learning together in these experiences, and the communication is going to be hard, it's going to be different, it's going to be new, but we're in this together.
Tanvi, what practical tips can you give parents to create an environment where their teens feel comfortable sharing their thoughts?
Yeah, the most important practical tip is like to be non-judgmental space, like create that non-judgmental space. And we've all probably heard that before, but how you can do that is really like as a parent or guardian, telling your child anytime throughout the day for a couple of days, just letting them know like, hey, you're not alone. You can let me know whatever you're going through and I won't judge. I'm here for you. And so as you keep saying that, the child maybe one day like they're stressed for a test and they may not want to tell their parent. But as a parent says that to them, they'll be like, "Hey, I can go talk to my parent." So that kinda creates this comfortable space that we can talk with each other and also sets the example like, "Hey, you can do this, like, I'm here for you."
Yeah, I think creating some sort of validation saying, look, I understand where you're coming from. You're feeling this way. I get it. You're okay. You're in a safe space. Let's talk about it. How can parents effectively show their support and become an ally for their teens? Because that's the important part. You want to know if someone's on your side.
Definitely, yeah. So I like to think of it in kind of three steps. The first, we did the non-judgmental. The second, the child shares about their emotions. And we'll talk about the card deck later for that. But then after you do that second one and you have their emotions in front of you, as a parent or guardian, you can say, here are the three things I can do. I can continue lending a listening ear. I can share my advice or my story. Or the third one is I can share a strategy. And if it's a strategy, doing a breathing technique or something like that together is so important because we're going to practice together and empower together.
And you mentioned the emotion cards. Let's talk about that. The emotion cards, they can spark an important conversation about mental health and well being.
Yeah, so I actually created an emotion cards deck last summer, and the really idea of that is like the emotion wheel, but in a card deck form. And you're able to open the communication about mental health because it's more of a game about mental health, really. And you're identifying that specific emotion with prompts along the way, emojis, colors, definitions. And when you get to that specific emotion, there's going to be a definition of it. So you can acknowledge that, yeah, I have this. I'm not shooing it away because it's negative. And then once you acknowledge it, you have a strategy, which is a light bulb strategy that you can use. And if the parent, guardian, and child is doing this together, they can do that strategy together. And so it's really an amazing opportunity to bring the conversation up about mental health in a really subtle way, but also identify the emotion. Because as teenagers, that's something we're learning newly. And also, like the adults being able to do that together can create a space where, hey, whatever emotion I'm going through, whatever mental health challenge I'm going through, I know my parent is there for me. And I just wanted to say to all the parents out there, thank you so much for all the amazing work you do. We're so grateful to have you in our lives.
Oh, I think that gratitude can go a really long way. I want to ask you for a moment about social media and smartphones. We know that the iPhone is turning 17 this year, which is crazy to think about. A single generation knows nothing but life with a smartphone. And that tends to scientists and researchers have said that has created some blocks when it comes to communication. So I can see how that is creating a block between parents and kids when it comes to communicating. So you have to find a new way to communicate with your kids when it comes to dealing with this as sort of a roadblock. Any advice for parents when it comes to monitoring smartphones or taking a different approach when it comes to limiting screen time?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like the American Academy of Pediatrics, they kind of created this 5 C's of mental health. And it's really just to help because, of course, we're not doing the 2 hour screen time limit anymore because
Yeah.
that's not able, because the child is more unique. And so letting them based off the child, based off the content they see, based off the things that they interact with, how they use social media, the parent and child come together and explore what's a good time limit for them or how they can use it and be good for their own mental health. But if you're talking about the mental health terms, the parent can text the child in this conversation. They can send Instagram reels, and that kind of stuff helps them keep bonded through the phone and in real life. And personally, like I love when my parents do that because I'm able to have that social media connection with them and they're trying something new just to support me. And that's something that's important as well to talk about these topics and learn together in the social media field.
Yeah, it's all part of that validation. Look, I hear you. I know how you like to communicate. Here's an emoji, here's an Instagram reel, here's something on Snapchat. I mean, there are different ways of communicating. And I think as a parent, it has to be your responsibility of trying to figure out how best to communicate. That's why I think those cards are so important because visually, like we talk in text mode, we think in emoji. I mean, I hate to say it, but that's just the truth. That's the culture we live in these days.
Definitely, yeah, and a lot more emojis are being invented, which is an amazing idea
Yes.
because we have more emotions.
That's true. Taanvi, always great to speak with you. For more information on Taanvi's book, head to taanvi.us, Uplift Teens Today, How to Spark the Parent-Child Conversation. And her book is there. It's available. Make sure you check out her website. Always a pleasure to have you, Taanvi. Stay with us. Daily Flash continues in just a moment.